Chelik Chof Aleph, Parshas Vayakhel, the second Sichah. It's a Sichah which is, as we mentioned, most Sichas we learn as part of the project Likkutei Sichos. Aleph. In the Zayar from Heintige Parsha wird erzählt. In the Zayar, in this week's Parsha, the Zayar tells over, as ein Mo, once, when the Chevraia von Reb Shimon ben Yochai, seinen bei ihm gewen und gerät in Jana von Seder Satera, once, when Reb Shimon ben Yochai's group was sitting and discussing the secrets of Torah, had Rashbi gesehen, as Reb Yossi have a maharer b'mila d'alma. So Reb Shimon ben Yochai saw that Reb Yossi was entering thoughts about worldly matters. In other words, he was thinking about life. He was thinking about matters which are not connected with Torah. Hat ihm gesagt, Yossi kum ashlin dieknach, at chad chaserbach. So Reb Shimon ben Yochai told him and said, Yossi, get up and perfect your image. Dieknach means your image, a term used in Kabbalah referring to a person's spiritual makeup. So he told him, Yossi, get up and perfect your image, for a letter of yours is missing. So he told him, Yossi, kum ashlim dieknach, come up and perfect your image, at chad chaserbach, for a letter of yours is missing. Rashbi, and the Rebbe explains, Rashbi hat gesehen, as mitzad dem, was Reb Yossi hat mahar gewinn, b'mila d'alma, is gevar nach Yisarn in ein dieknon. Ein ois von sein Namen, chaserbach. Reb Shimon ben Yochai saw, because Reb Yossi was thinking about worldly matters, his image was lacking. One of his letters in his name was missing. Now, it says in Likkutei Sichos, the Yud of Rebbe, the Yud of Rabbi Yossi departed from him. So he brings down the Likkutei Sichos. If you look in order 2, the Stalag middle say Yud showed Rebbe. So the Yud departed. So that's what the Shimon ben Yochai told him. Then afterwards, Chom Rabbi Yossi, v'chodam memila in deir Isa. Rabbi Yossi arose and rejoiced in the words of Torah. Istalag beit of Shimon, and Reb Shimon looked at him and said, Istalag beit of Shimon, and Shimon looked at him, Amarlei, Amarlei, so he told him these words, Hashta at ant shalom. Now you are complete. V'dieknach shalom, and your image is complete. Reb Shimon had gesagt danach, if impossible, we asked the sits, and following this story, Reb Shimon ben Yochai shared a teaching on the pasuk. He made it tzitz, which, as we know, is one of the Shemanim Gadol of the Kohen Gadol. The tzitz was the golden band, which was worn on the Kohen Gadol's forehead, which would have the words Kodesh Hashem. So that's the story of the Zayar. The Zayar, just to recap, the story is that once the holy group, Shimon's holy group, was sitting and speaking the Seder Satera, Rashbi saw that Yossi was thinking about other things, and he told him, Yossi, get up and complete your image. One of your names is lacking. One of the letters in your name is lacking, which was the Yud. And then he said, Rabbi Yossi arose, rejoiced in the words of Torah. Shimon looked at him and said, you are now complete, and your image is complete. Now, the Rebbe says, Implug is Sipper Tamur B'Yoser. The story is very puzzling. Wie kann sein, as Rabbi Yossi, was es gewähnt von die Gedele Abtanoim gefindig sich der Messias Shazri v'Chevraya Shaloi bei welchem hat gerät Rassi Teira so b'shas Meis Mahar Zayim Mil Dalma. So now, how could Rabbi Yossi, which was one of the greatest Tanoic Talmidei Chachamim, while attending a gathering of Reb Shimon ben Yochai and his group, when Torah's secrets were being shared, at that very moment, he is thinking about worldly matters. We're not talking about regular people. We're talking about Tanoim and part of the Chevraya of Reb Shimon ben Yochai. So how could B'Shas Meiser Rabbi Yossi be thinking about other things? Und Oim wird gefinaz Boras, das was besten Mal gewinn beim Mille de Alma. Ist gewinn even was ist gehalten ab die Tedo, bis als lieb dem. Ist recht zum Mafzig sein dem, hätten die das die Tedo. Was soll man sich dann gerät? Now, even if you're going to say, to justify why he was thinking about worldly matters, it was a heter, even to the extent that Rabbi Yossi was permitted to think about worldly matters at that very moment. So even if you want to say that, it's shredli d'chisos. So now you have the opposite problem arises. Shredli for us is by him durch them nechsa gevarnan is for zaynam. So why just because of him? I mean, if he has a heter and it's permissible to draw from Teda, then why does he deserve that one of his letters in his name is forfeit? So that's the question over here. If he's a great Tana, how can he think about Mila Dalma? And if there's a heter, so why do he deserve that one of his letters in his name was taken away or lacking? Base. L'cheda kemen das Ma'var sein, al Yisayt dem Bier von Taten is at ha'odesiv there. Seemingly, this question can be solved based on the explanation of Reb Leivik, the Rebbe's father, and his notes on Zayar. The Kabbalah Sif Gimel, as we're going to discuss in Sif Gimel, will be hacked in the preface. Alba is basis given from the Chivraya Shadashbi, was by Zay is Bechlal given to Rasamanasi. Even though Rabbi Yossi belonged to Rabbi Yossi by Shimon Yechai's group, a group of Talmidei Chachamim who were generally, the Torah was their sole occupation, Teirasim and is that aber nit given akopanim b'chol azmanim and them sulfon nor iskim batera. So even though he was part of the group, nevertheless, Rabbi Yossi himself was not in the category of Teirasim that his whole life was Torah. Was sein nit mafsik zer lernen if zu isik sein in a umane smil dalma. If it is in Gemara, I'll show have it uwen l'abediris. So, even though Rabbi Yossi was part of Rav Shimon Yechai's group, which their group was their sole occupation was Torah, Rabbi Yossi himself was not at the category of those who occupied in Torah full time. In other words, those who don't interrupt their learning to earn a living. Rather, the Gemara says Rabbi Yossi was a tanner. This is what he did. The Gemara in Shabbos says Rabbi Yossi was a tanner, a craftsman who processed animal skins. Uman l'abeder. So this is what he did. He processed animal skins. So the Gemara in Shabbos says, and Rashi explains. Euch gefällt mir, als Rabbi Yossi hat sich äußerst gewendet, solche Zibel, Dogma, the verschiedene Takonis, was angeführt in Tziperi. In addition, we find that Rabbi Yossi was involved in communal affairs. For instance, in the city of Tziperi, he introduced various different takonas over there. So the Gemara Sanhedrin says. So now the Rebbe says, so based on this background that we have Rabbi Yossi, you can say as minute alma v'achar Yossi at mahar givens and given yanufin circuit siver. So you could say that when you say worldly matters that Rabbi Yossi had been thinking about were communal affairs. When they're far out the tzalib dem mafsik given in mitzvah shmias. Razi Teda about Osik B'Tzerchet Tzibur, Osik B'Tzerchet Tzibur is Deichet HaMatera. Now, therefore, he diverted his attention from discussing secrets of Torah to thinking about these material matters. Why? Because communal affairs supersedes Talmud Torah. That's the halacha. Was brought down Shulchan Aruch, the Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, that Tzerchet Tzibur is Deichet Talmud Torah. Now, so you want to say that, what does it mean? Milad Alma, he was thinking about Tzeicher Tzibur, which he had a whole heter to do that. Or the mitzvot mit euch, you can mevar sein. For us, es is, von deswegen nefzig geworden durch dem es von sein Namen. Now, so even though Taki had a heter, and we know Tzeicher Tzibur supersedes learning Torah, we could also explain why these thoughts caused him to lose one of the letters of his name. Das was also with Tzeicher Tzibur is Deichet Talmud Torah, is that it's all for the benefit of the masses, of the majority. Aber in dem Oisig b'Tzeicher Tzibur atzmei can werden durch der Isaskus HaYerida, wie es Chazal sagen, hatel alei Tzeicher Tzibur vein kol ma'alein. So, yes, you're right, that communal affairs supersede terror study only because it benefits the public. However, the individual engaged in communal affairs himself, through his involvement, will suffer a fall. And until Chazal say, you place the burden of communal affairs upon this person, and he will seize, and they will seize on their own. In other words, it's a big cry to be involved in Sichah Tzibur, and that. And the Rebbe says this: when you find by Mordechai, we get at Amol Baruch. We spoke about Elaine. This is in Chelik Zayin the Sichah. As there is geblieben, we learned this once. As there is geblieben am Mishnah Melech, weil sein Bottle mit Divinität und Nichas l'Shara. Is geblieben Tevis Klal Yisrael, was is Dirchat HaMotera. Now, we said about Mordechai that he remained in his post to be Mishnah Melech of Viceroy, since by him leaving learning Torah and remaining in the government, he benefited the entire Jewish community. For that sake, nevertheless, by Yem Gufa, even though he still had a Yerida, the Chachamim about as by him, he felt that he lived regardless of Talmud Torah. Why? Because he was demoted in ranking for his virtue and greatness of Torah had diminished. So that's how the you could say, yes, Rabbi was involved in Sichah Tzibur, and automatically that caused him to have a Yerida. That's the simple shot. The Rebbe says that Hezber is genommen von Bier von Taten, in seine Orasiv Zeher, if the receiver has das, was Rebbe Maharigla Mild Alma, nit a Hider von Dvaram Betel Chas V'Shalom, das is the Inyan von Amol Sichah, was is Hadavar Gadol. The explanation is also derived in the Malevik's commentary on the Zeher, on the story that Rebbe's thoughts of worldly matters didn't consist of Tvarim B'Teilim, Chas V'Shalom, or rather refers to the toil of conversation, which is a great thing. We get at the whole Barucha, and in Bir Maimer Chazal, Adam Yulad, as we explained, what Chazal say, man was born to work, to toil. Any day in the Amol Teda, in the Amol Sichah, have a Emer the Amol Teda Nivra. Now, I don't know whether it is for toil of Torah or for the toil of conversation. And it says you must say that he was created for the toil of Torah. As from them Gufavus and Tedas Emes is da Havamina. As I mentioned, by shafting the word on the Amol Sichah, as moving on as thus is an Ayurvedic analysis. The fact that the Torah, which is Tedas Emes, can have the possibility that man was created for the toil of conversation implies that toil is a lofty Aveda. Sichah is a lofty Aveda. Enough, even more so. Even according to the conclusion that when we say Adam L'Amol Yulad is for Teda, is das nicht schel gami the meaning from Amol Sichah. It doesn't negate the whole concept of Amol Sichah. Nor as Amol Sichah alone, it's not the tachas b'ris avadim. You're just saying that that's not the purpose of the world. Is not just for a toil of conversation. Just saying it's not the ultimate purpose of man. On the contrary, to achieve the ultimate goal and virtue of the toil of Teda, a person has to engage in Aveda of toil of conversation. As the Ebershter soll sagen, wie auch der Asel Ma'amar ist mehen nivra Ilam, die Alte Rebbe ist mir wahr in Tanya, als der Asel Ma'amar ist sein ständig Melubischen Ilam, die Savas Lachiese, und der Kaime, als das ist der Teich von Mille der Alma. Der Asel Ma'amar ist für seinen Breda und Melubischen Ilam, und wird angerufen Mille der Jede. At this point, is particular, we see this, that the Ombel of Sichah will also speaks about like a spiritual conversation. As it says about the Sar Ma'amaros, the 10 utterances through which he created the world. As the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, that the Sar Ma'amaros are continuously enclosed in the world to create, to sustain the world. And this is the meaning of the worldly matters, the 10 utterances that create the world and are enclosed in it. They are referred to as Milad Alma, simple words. In Aveda, AC says this. In Aveda, speaking about letter, like the basis of Aveda, Mahar b'milad alma almost is the Aveda from Bidunim. So Mavar Mazakar sign the Inyanya Ilam, Frad durch the Aveda von Kol Ma'aseri l'Shem Shemayim, the bit of Sichah von Yonah Rishul Shal Adam Milad Alma was the Avodah tut auf dem Kiyum Ilma de Sichah Alma. Now, this is in Avodah. What does it mean? Milad Alma. It means the Avodah refining and purifying worldly matters. Through the Avodah, all your actions should be for the sake of heaven, and in all your ways you shall know Him, which is the act of refining and purifying the permissible matters of the world, worldly matters. Through this Avodah, the world is sustained through Sichah de Lamayla. Aber from this vegin is thus nid be'eref to their inyan from Omol Teda. Now, even though this is a very great thing, it can't be compared to the Avodah of the toil of Teda. Frat say this for doesn't do it, especially the secrets of Teda. Alpha be'as dork Omol Sichah, right ufkatan der kiyama elam, idea sar mamars. Even though the toil of conversation helps to sustain the world through 10 utterances, or nach mer the kavanah for this in the shaman mata is nitla sakin atzman of the sakin aguf never shamamas the chalka beilam. Und durch den Avodah des Verbunden führt sich beikar ist der Tachlis von Brias Elam und der Stavak Lishbarach Lias Liswarf Lias Lidira Betachtenim. And especially the secrets of terror, for although furthermore, the purpose of the Neshama's descent below is not to masakin itself, but rather to masakin the person's body and his portion of this world, and through his Avodah, the Avodah refining the ultimate aim of creation, that Hashem desires to have a dwelling place in the lowest world is fulfilled. But that's vegan is Omol Teda Hechef and Omol Sichah. Nevertheless, the toil of Torah is superior to the toil of conversation. Also, says Mamshich that Elah Kibus is Hechef and Elam, because it draws down the godly light that transcends the world. Also, says when the fire is given, Achisarin Reviasis Namen. Ben here, Ben Milad Alma, about das is Idil Lagabe dem Inge von sein Omol Teda. So therefore, Rabbi Yosef's name became deficient in one letter when he entered the thoughts of worldly matters. For this is a descent Lagabe the Omol Teda. So that's one explanation. The one explanation is, yes, he was involved in Milad Alma. He was involved in Avodas HaKlal, which is very, very great, but Lagabe Omol Teda, it's lacking. The Rebbe says in Dalet, aber Rebbe Geser is das nicht kein Bier Maspek of them was Eis Chad Chosserbach. If you look at it in a deeper way, it's not enough explanation why one of your letters is missing. The Tanaim is given bestens to Shev Nishmasel. The conduct of the Tanaim and Amoraim correlated with the source of the Neshamas, of their souls. And then it'll be unser Fall, as das was Rebbe is Dafkat Maharig Ben Bemilad Alma. This will be the Tatas Mevar, the basis of Chilas Amalchus, was is the Mocker, if it must be Ya, the Chaver, in the Sabbath from the Aserva Maras the Malchus. Well, the fire is Zain Avodah, the Minya, from almost Sichah B'Kiyam Elam. As the Rebbe explains, the Rebbe explains that Rabbi Yossi in particular was involved in the thoughts of Milad Alma, worldly matters, because Rabbi Yossi personified the attribute of Malchus, which is the source that creates the worlds of Bria Yitzir Nasiya that are created from the Hasan Ramaris of Malchus of Atzilus. So therefore his Avodah was the toil of conversation and sustaining the world. When we bow the Shlichus from the Beisi Balma, then is the Avodah from Omol Sichah is Emes Takaz and Omol Teda is done Ili Godel. The Gabi Omol Sichah of Teda is Hechen von Welt, aber wie können sagen, als zu dem, was Beisi have a Mahar ben Milad Almo. So right after Sarin in Zain Nalan was the Shema other was Mechavan zu Chilas Nishmasi. Based as das is the Avodah was Bezim zu seine Shema over Mela to sein Shem. The Rebbe asks a very simple question. Since Rabbi Yosef's mission in this world was the Avodah of the toil of conversation, so you're right. It's indeed true that the toil of Torah has an advantage of the toil of conversation, and Torah transcends the world. Nevertheless, how can you say that because he's dealing with Milad Alma would cause him to lose a letter in his name, being that a person's name is along with the level of his soul? When this was fitting, when this was the fitting of Avodah for his soul, and by extension of his name. Al derech videre bavus der Wort b'shem Rebzusa ma'anapoli as mevet by him nit monen for was is nit in the darga for Sadikim Delim, nor for was is nit Zusha. As Zusha said, famous story, Zusha said But then when I come up to heaven, they're not going to ask me why I wasn't like so-and-so. They're going to ask me, why weren't you on the level of Zusa? Zeisveid, more so. Balas libdem was by him is nita the ilif von a zweite Aveda wird as a chesan b'shmei is yar levovi. When the idea was by him stern to bekaims and the Aveda was is in sugatel to geworden b'silcha b'tu devov. Furthermore, the person will surely be disheartened without the advantage of the other Aveda, coupled with the resulting deficiency in his name. So this awareness will prevent him from performing his designated Aveda with joy and greatness. Always down for after this then. For us, the basic need magisch given, dem Chesaron was is given, geworden bediekni b'shmei, bis spielt ihm gesagt, und azay euch, wenn ist zurück geworden, durch dem was Chodi. Der Reise, Asholin, hat es in Rashbi Megali given. Now, why didn't Rabbi Yossi himself sense that his image and name were lacking until Rav Shimon ben Yochai told him? Similarly, after he restored and complete through having rejoiced in the worlds of Torah, why did Rashbi have to disclose this to Rabbi Yossi? Okay, so now, we'll do one word. Okay, Rabbi and them. So the explanation is like this. He said this. The question answers itself. Mitzad Rabbi Yossi mitzad atzmi that says, Loit be zayin avodah dar zayin mitzad zayin sherish and hashama is zayin here b'mil d'alma nit given kin chasar v'ad rabba kanal that avodah mil d'yukli shmei is given b'shem limusei. As we said, Rabbi Yossi himself, according to the way of his avodah was meant to be, based on his soul source, engaging in thoughts of worldly matters, wasn't a deficiency. On the contrary, his avodah were complete. Thus was es hat dann gefällt in ihm is given binyone als einer von die Chevrai der Rashbi. Rabbi Yossi's shortcoming was related to his belonging to Rav Shimon ben Yochai's group. Rashbi auf der Rasim Nossi Kilkaman was hat euch demelt gedarf bei ihm sein und der Pfarrer hat darf der Rashbi Reisha Chevrai kennt erkennen in Rabbi Yossi der Chesaron und euch wenn der Chesaron ist enough nishtal geworden. So Rabbi Yossi's shortcoming was related to belonging to the Shimon ben Yochai's group, which we know his quality was to Nasim and Asi. The Torah is the sole occupation, which Rabbi Yossi should have also exemplified then. So Shimon ben Yochai, which was the group leader, could perceive Rabbi Yossi's deficiency and also tell when the deficiency was ultimately rectified. Okay, we'll continue tomorrow.